Growing Up by Damien Broderick. Originally published in the September 1976 issue of Galileo magazine. Republished in the Zeitgeist Machine, an anthology of Australian science fiction in 1977. Read by Daryl T. Smith II for my channel Quasar Spectra. Growing Up. Afloat in her inertial field, the child dreams. A breath of subtle particles wafts through her flesh and bone, responsive to every pulse and matrix of her central nervous system. Guardian machines, sensitive as flowers to the sun's warmth, inhale that fragrance, tropic to the contours and gradients of her sleeping thoughts. They sense the flux and burgeoning of her adolescence, the chemistry of her pubescent mind. She dreams of dancing. The gracious, moving figures are vivid, defined, precise. The taiko gongs and the wind instruments play at oibuki, pursuing independently their same melody, toning in complexity to the next beat, the next unison, and departing once more into contained autonomy. Sriyanie sees and hears this clearly, comes with the other dancers from the green room as the Gagaku orchestra brings Jo to conclusion. Yet she is distinct from them also, at once immanent and detached, spectator and creator, her dreaming self, the stage. Her dream approaches lucidity. Almost her state of consciousness is bifurcate. This condition, indeed, is an elementary discipline of the third level, and the child, the young woman, is on the verge of passage to fourth level. But Sriyanie has not intended lucidity, and the watchful machines detect her disquiet. Under a pale green sky, many children watch the Bugaku dance in awed delight. They whisper to one another. Several hold hands. The youngest stir with a certain restlessness. Upon the great platform is a damask-carpeted stage, and the black and red of the platform's perimeter gleam against the grass of the meadow. The dancers move to a largo pace, then quicken their steps as the second movement, ha, is begun. Sriyanie watches, joyfully, in her dream, Sriyanie dance. The gorgeous high-end costumes, red, purple, and gold, the bright flowers in her hair, the flashing shifts of hue as the dancers disclose the hidden inner sleeves of their gowns. Sriyanie is a bird adrift. She knows that this is Warawamai, the children's Bugaku, a left dance, elegant and slow, her departure, in truth, from third level. She dances to a melody older than machines, older at any rate than any machine she has ever known, and its Ichikotsuchu mode is alien to the musical canon of her people, for it is based in a tetrachord. Yet she has lived now with Karyobinga, the bird, for many months, and the archaic Nipponese music is an intimate caress across 5,000 years, binding her with its patterned beauty. That contiguity somehow is alarming. The orchestration of her sleeping brain peaks and trembles. Sadness and loss suffuse the images of grace. Elsewhere, awake, the child's friend is informed of her grief and lifts herself sighing to her feet, strangely moved by her little girl's readiness to leave childhood behind. Beth speaks without words to the guardian machines and goes out into the chill night air. Third-level youngsters are not permitted transit. For friends, walking is an obligatory act of praise. The kako player strikes his side drum. They are in the Q movement, dancing allegretto, the sho sounding to its player's breath, the tiny hichiriki piping like a soul in agony, like the kalavinka, the magic bird. In its complex entirety, the music drones. It drones exquisitely. The dance is near its end. Gong and drum announce their coda of percussion. The splendid, gentle dance is done. Sriyanie is exhausted and elated, transfigured. The child is asleep, and the dance is in the child, is done, is in the past, is the past. Sriyanie's eyes still their blind dance, and she stirs, groaning, waking, the inertial field holding her weightless and aloft as she wakes. Her mood confused and resentful. Beth is waiting in the dim light and takes her to her breast. She holds the child at arm's length, then, and regards her with loving patience. Sriyanie smiles ruefully, knuckling sleep from her eyes, drops her hands to her lap and gazes at them. "I felt so sad, Ummi. Did I wake you?" Through the foul, scudding haze overhead, a handful of stars glint. "I was making colors, sweet," Beth says, touching a loose lock of the girl's white hair. "You know I don't mind. Would you like to tell me, or should I withdraw for a little while?" Sriyanie smiles again, a sudden radiance. She puts her arms about her other and hugs her tightly. "I love you, Beth. Please stay." For a time they sit in silence, the older woman sinking into a receptive meditation, attending to the background thutter of the machines as they cherish the child's integrity, watching her face through half-closed eyes, adding colors to her own private composition. "I saw the reality of Mujokan," the girl says at last, slowly. The fleeting impermanence of our lives, of our work. I dreamed the bird dance, and I saw how beautiful it was, and I thought of those silly, lovely Heian people drifting to extinction like falling cherry blossoms, all governed by tact and taste and ritual, and how their freedom was isomorphic to the rules of their world, and I guess how the lords contain us under the bounds of possibility, knowing so infinitely much more than we can, weaving their vast dark patterns out between the stars, and we're watching from beyond the platform, hardly understanding any of it, and what's worse, even the lords are bound by limitations of their own. Oh, grand limits we can't even begin to imagine, but bounded in their cold freedom. And Beth, it was so sad." Her friend looks at her with grave, tender eonirn. She says at last, "There's a scene in one of Chikamatsu's plays, Love Suicides at Soniaki, where the lovers begin their final journey. Do you know it, Sri?" Blinking her tearful eyes, the child shakes her head. "It goes like this," her other says in old Nipponese. "Farewell to this world, and to the night farewell. We who walk the way to death, to what should we be likened? To the frost on the road, to the graveyard, vanishing with each step ahead. This dream of a dream is sorrowful." The friend falls silent, tranquil, the words whispering away into the night. Sriyanie rocks back and forth, cross-legged, taking the ancient lamentation into herself. Then once more she begins to grin and sees that Beth is grinning, and her hand steals into her other's. "You sly person, Ummi. Will you play Zen Master tonight? Well, I suppose an atrocious pun is better than a blow across the head." She adopts a reverent expression and intones the final lines as they followed the phonemic rules of Mid-English, her special area. "Yume no yume koso aware nare." This dream of a dream is aware. She pulls a face and jumps to her feet. Beth rises too and gives a small bow. "I thought you'd like it, but it is a useful joke. Awareness replaces sorrow, Sri. I don't mean we should disguise and bind our emotions under a carapace of thought, but on a meta level we know a reality larger than small losses and achievements. We must grieve for a death, but it is foolish to grieve for a life." Barefoot, they walk in wet grass, sleeping flowers crinkling beneath their toes. A luminous theorem glows like fire in the sky above the fifth's arena, its axioms flickering in a gorgeous aurora of transformations. Sriyanie's melancholy is dispelled in the crisp night. Her breath puffs on the air. She feels a rush of love for her friend, her friends, her world, even the brooding ubiquity of the cyborg lords, their energies cracking through the world like an invisible, inaudible electric storm, does not blight this new acceptance. They come to Beth's privacy, and the domestic machines welcome them with warm odors and warming vibrations. Beth leads her through a dull red shield to the transit locus, then faces her for a moment, holding both her hands. "Let's go see the sunrise on the beach at Suva," Shri's other suggests buoyantly, and the tiny cues of her body, the minute pressures of her fingers, are saying suddenly in an urgent kinesic tongue, "Trust me. Open yourself. Expect change, little love. Trust me." Transit! "Am I ready? How wonderful!" the girl says dubiously. "I'm hungry, Beth. Are you? Shall we have fish?" Beth nods, and the scintillation of transit discontinuity sings in their bodies. Sriyanie steps forward, expecting beyond the filtration field the boom of waves, the greasy mother-of-pearl gloss of the ocean, the bustle of people in the new day, a tang of fish on coals. Nullity. Blank void. Nothingness. Unspeakable gulf of numb, black, weightless nowhere. The child screams in terror, and there is no sound. Her mind is trapped in dread, flailing without motion, draining to some nadir of horror which is total inaction. In the instantaneous no time before awareness is finally lost, she clings to the memory of her other's hand. "Trust me, little one, trust me." Anomic, her central field of consciousness, of being, sustains appalling paradox. Tenuous as vapor, a quintessence, she is dissipated in infinite void. Simultaneously, she undergoes catastrophic implosion. The multi-stable universe recedes to oblivion. She suffers ultimate singular density. Suspended, dispersed, a frail bubble of grotesque mass, her being drones to some complex derivative of the august cosmic inertial frame. It is dark, dark, deepest red. What are these forms? Limpid, fugitive, a geometry of edges lined in gold and purple, gentle pressures passing from nowhere to nowhere. She rocks back and forth, slowly, slowly, to booming, delayed echoes. Bright stars reel past sunbursts tasting of gems. Light ebbs in sluggish waves, rolling in pale bands and bands of darkness. Percussions rise and fall, climbing, pounding through bone and nerve as glimmer makes vast shadows grow and thrum and dominate her rhythms like the throb of an ocean, like a primordial heartbeat. Reality is a cage, a comforting restraint of vertical shafts, an irksome debility. She is depleted, miserable. She draws the warmth and the soft pale glow to herself, encloses it within her. Brightness regards her. Gratitude surges within her like a tide. There is another. She reaches for the warmth, crooning with love, holding to that trust she had almost failed, and recognizes Beth. "Ummi," she says. "Ummi, hold me." "Shri," her other says, "I love you. I love you." Painfully, exuberantly, she rebuilds her world. The void is not without form. At one pole she retains herself, at the other, her other. Between them, the pulse of energy elaborates its grid, its field, its intricate, manifold relationships, its matrix. Does she build the world? Does the world disclose itself to her? She sees that both are true. She takes colors from the void and shapes them. They tint the patterns of the void. Many people laugh. Many people speak, disputing. Many people weep. She has invented them all. Beth is with her. She is not Beth. She is like Beth. She is like herself. She likes herself and Beth and the universe they have built. She turns, withdraws, broods, grows unhappy with her work. Why must Beth plague her with her presence? Violently she repulses her other. She modifies her work, tampers with its shape. She feels pain. She feels joy. She cannot find Beth, and she weeps, tasting salt. She is in the sea, and the salt fills her mouth, her hard teeth snapping against a melancholy of blood. "Ummy," she cries, "hold my hand." The world jigs and capers. In the gibbering confusion, Beth grips her hand. Strata slide and grind horrendously. She constructs taxa and pays the toll. She giggles and groans. Expectation swells within her, seethes. She tenses her muscles and fixes her gaze, and holds Beth's hand in her own, and leaps. They tumble together into sand. Sriyanie hoots, turns her shoulder into the hot white sand, hot, and goes heels over head, comes up snorting and flops to her knees to stare at the crashing white waves in the endless, surging ocean. Beth brushes sand from her own hair and examines small dry shells. Sriyanie runs heavily to the edge of the water and dips her toes into clear, frothy ripples. Clear? "Wow!" she says, scanning out to sea. Tiny white sails dance at the deep horizon. "It's beautiful! Where's the pollution gone?" Her face creases. She says in puzzlement, turning, "Hey, Umi, there was something weird about—" Dread, like nightmare, assails her. The sun has been up for hours. Beth sits cross-legged on the sand beside a glowing fire pit. Silvery fat fish wrapped in large leaves char on the coals. Sampling a glass of some sparkling liquid, Beth holds the bottle out toward her. "Breakfast'll be ready in a moment, Sri," Beth tells her. "Come and sit by me. We're not in Suva, pet." "Where did the fire come from?" she says, shrilly. "Is this a cyborg simulation?" She stares at the pit in horror, knowing that it is not a simulation, knowing that Beth would not have brought her to a simulation. Her loathing is ghastly in its effect. The fire is no longer there. It has never been there. Beth rises from the unmarked white sand and comes to her as she stands trembling. "Too fast, pet? But now we have no breakfast. Look." She gestures, and the fish are there again, cooked now and piled on a woven platter. "I made it up, Shri. Then you unmade it. But it's real, Shri. Hang on to that. Here, have something to eat." She picks up a fish, gingerly, and takes a bite, then hands it to the girl. "Mmm." Beth licks her lips. "Tasty. Try some. You'll like it." Sriyanie takes the fish and places it between her teeth. The aroma is superb. She bites, and the white flesh is firm. She cannot bring herself to swallow it and spits her mouthful onto the sand. She remembers how she and Beth built the world, and the knowledge is too awesome, too large to absorb. "We made it up?" she says in a small voice. "We made all this up?" "Well, sort of," Beth says, smiling at last. "You did most of it. I just helped tidy up the edges." "Where are we, Beth? Beth, am I still asleep?" "We call it time stop, pet. Our duration is orthogonal to the prime metrodynamic. We've shunted out of transit, and we can stay here as long as we like before we go back. It's basically third-level math, but you won't really appreciate all of it until fifth. Sriyanie, she adds, proud and formal, you've now been initiated into the first of the great mysteries. We'll be moving across to fourth as soon as we get back from Suva. The formality vanishes, and she hugs the girl tightly. Now eat your fish, and we'll see what we can dream up to drink with it. Sriyanie squats in the sand and retracts her attention. Her heart is pounding. Absently, she slows her tachycardia, hushes the 1,000 anxious voices of her autonomic system. An immense joy sweeps her. Her profoundly trained mind, now that Beth's calculated, shocking challenge has been met, sorts and matches what she's learned with what she has known. The epistemological requirements for this apparently insane ontology map themselves outward and inward from her painstakingly provisional verities. She sees how time-stop is possible. She discerns gaps where she has never noticed them before. They are immediately self-evident. Immediately also, the bridging transformations generate themselves. Her joy is a tranquil exultation. She sees how time-stop is inevitable. The Lords do not know, she posits quietly. In mathematical notation, cyborg percept-concept-action structures, Beth tells her, are categorically prohibited from this condition. Then we are truly free, the child breathes. They have limits we do not. Beth, why didn't you tell me? You were not ready, her other says. She speaks, of course, in Chomsky, the basic language she shares with Sriyanie and the other Frees. The loops and structures of her utterance provide their own unassailable conviction. Besides, she adds, there are societal restraints as well as epistemological ones. The cyborgs must never learn about time-stop. It is our only retreat, our minimal advantage. One day, hopefully, we shall learn enough to make it more than that. But for now, the ontological access of transit discontinuity must remain a secret. Do you see? Yes, Beth, says the girl, and withdraws once more, her thoughts accelerating, the webs of concept and action broadening and growing robust. Above her, the sun moves toward noon in the improbably clear sky. Sweat springs from her skin, trickles in her armpits. The wine is clean and tart on her tongue. She puts down her glass and shades her eyes, glorying in the universe she has hewn with Beth. Let me tell you a story, her other says, turning over and digging her elbows into the sand. It's a very old tale, one of the oldest we know. Have you heard of Oedipus, the swollen-footed king? I don't think so. A Greek lord? One of the mythic figures of the archaic Hellenic culture, Beth says. His father was Laos, the left-sided. His grandfather, Labdakos, the lame. These ascriptions, as you can see, were metonymic. Well, the story goes this way. Laos is banished from Thebes and develops a homosexual relationship with the charioteer Chrysippus, his patron's son. In time he returns to his throne, marries Jocaste, but restrains from heterosex because an oracle reveals that her son will kill him. During a fertility rite, though, Laos grows drunk and lustful, and Oedipus is conceived. The baby is consigned, with orders for his murder, to a herdsman, but the executioner relents and merely stakes the child by his foot to a chilly mountain-top. Before Oedipus can perish from exposure, a peasant finds him and rears him in secrecy. Years later, the adult Oedipus returns to Thebes in a chariot and encounters Laos on his way to the Delphic oracle. In an argument over right of precedence on the road, Laos causes Oedipus's horse to be slain. In fury and ignorant of their relationship, his son kills him. The prophecy has been borne out. Subsequently, the road to Thebes is terrorized by the Sphinx, a monster with the body of a beast and the torso of a woman. To win the widowed queen's hand, Oedipus meets the monster in contest. He is riddled. What creature goes in the morning on 4 feet, at noon on 2, and in the evening on 3? He answers correctly, man. In mortification, the Sphinx suicides. For many years, Oedipus reigns in Thebes, fathering children by Jocaste, his all-unknown mother. As you can see, the chronology is somewhat strained. The ancient Greeks had no anti-agathics. At last Thebes is afflicted with plague and famine. An oracle reveals the cause, the royal incest, and the parricide which preceded it. Jocaste takes her own life, and Oedipus goes mad, tearing out his eyes. He leaves the city once again, attended only by his daughter Antigone, and himself attains supernatural insight. Beth falls silent. Sriyanie has been listening with keen interest, playing sand through her fingers. Now she gazes at the dazzling waves and muses. "It's lovely, Beth," she says at last. "Austere and terribly somber. I think I'll suggest it for a being them." She sucks at her lip. "I suppose Antigone came back to Thebes and took the throne?" "No. Oedipus had sons also. It was very rare for women to rule." "Oh, then I imagine the rightful heir was driven out and came back eventually to seize the crown." "Something like that. If I remember properly, Eteocles banished Polynices, who brought back an army, and both the contending brothers were killed. You see something cyclical, then?" "Beth, it's so rich in resonances, I don't know which harmonic to start with. It taps right into the deep structures. But look, if it's a myth, it can't stand by itself. It's just one element in a huge redundant mosaic, and anything I say must be so partial." "Naturally. But, Shri, myth is also holonic. Within the larger context, each part has its own integrity. Tell me what you got." "Well, right, the basic structure's cyclical, but it's also paradoxical. And there are strong cybernetic elements. The road to Thebes is obviously part of a prime information circuit, a model for data and decisions, and the Sphinx catapults that up to a meta level. I mean, hodological roots are the most blatant symbols any low-mobility culture can use to work out their problems with internal and external dynamics. Then there's that beautiful, iconic loop where the urban child is taken to doom by the pastoral intermediary and saved by the agrarian benefactor, and comes back to master the town and ends up transfigured again in the rural domain." Beth considers her through a mesh of lashes. "Low-mobility cultures also placed great store by kinship regulations." "Oh, sure," the girl says dismissively. "There's that whole strident incest thing with Laos symbolically fucking his son and Oedipus actually fucking his mother, and their town getting the pox. That's a surface reading, Beth, though I dare say the retailers did plenty of winking and nudging. What fascinates me is the deep resonance, you know. It's incredible. The whole thing's about us and the cyborgs. The dreadful road to high technology, where it leads, and the way out. Maybe the way out." "You understood the meaning of the Sphinx's riddle?" Sriyanie preens. "I know about walking sticks and chariots. Yes, Beth, man begins as an animal, passes through a bipedal state of simple culture, freeing his hands to use tools, and finally leans so heavily on his technology that it's completely introjected. Actually," she says with surprise. I guess that's true of individuals, too, crawling on all fours as babies. She trails off, and immense shock shows in her face. Abruptly, she jumps to her feet and runs to the sea, discarding her robe, and splashes wildly in the ebbing tide. Waist deep, she submerges, comes up coughing, light glinting from her pale body. The water lifts her like an inertial field, tugs her gently toward the long, dark line of the horizon. Shrieking in delight, she turns, paddling clumsily, forges to the shore, races in a dog-legged curve of deep footprints back to Beth. It's all about me, she gasps, out of breath, flat on her back. Me and time stop and that weird thing that happened. You are sly. It's a myth of the individual's psychotic development. Bravo! Beth applauds. Don't give me too much credit for ingenuity, though. The old psychologists recognized as much thousands of years ago. They even used it to denominate the principal inputs of individuation, the Oedipus nexus. Yes, yes, Sriyanie cries. So, lots of the details are apotropaic, to incorporate the meta levels. Old Swollen Foot begins in the sensory motor stage, and one limb is crippled. He develops through magic omnipotence, climaxing his journey through the pre-operational stage by killing his father. To attain the powers of adulthood, he must deal at the concrete operational level with a riddle. And the riddle, of course, is a rebus for the entire myth, combining individual and cultural development. Then, when he finally passes into the formal operational stage of adulthood, his insight into the abstract kinship transgression of his marriage hurls him into mystical consciousness. It's all elided, but it's all there. She's fairly bouncing with delight. He tears out his eyes because they are the organs of guilty perception, which takes us right back to his crime, since the baby's earliest social transaction was with his mother through their mutual gaze. And mystical insight requires a new meta level anyway, passing beyond rigorous formal operations into antinomies. It's devastating, Beth. How sublimely those old savages captured it all. Her drying hair clings to her scalp like pale fronds. Beth musses it and gets to her feet. All trace of their request is gone. They weren't really savages, Sri. They were at the very edge of the path leading to the cities, to the thinking machines. I imagine, though, they had no inkling of time stop. That had to wait until metrodynamic discontinuity. Why do you think the story is about you? They climb the sandhills, away from the beach. Insects buzz among the flowering grasses, the tropical trees. Well, this potential matrix we're in was built up the same way. I knew you were with me, but I felt omnipotent and lost. Then the phylogenetic codes came snapping in, one by one, and everything sort of crystallized. She stops, perched on one leg, and looks searchingly at her other. What would have happened if I'd come through here on my own? I'd have used psychosis, wouldn't I? If you got here, Beth agrees, I doubt that you would have been able to. It's a complicated trick, and only a very stable, imaginative adult mind can originate it. Youngsters entering fourth level are guided in, as I did with you. But if a child did come through without support, well, it's a horrifying thought. Total solipsism, I suppose. The reality we generate here is stabilized by consensus, and that includes all our sophisticated social constraints as well as the phylogenetic deep structures. The child shivers. She plucks a ripe fruit from a tree and bites into it. Rich, luscious juice covers her chin. You said this was the first of the great mysteries, she says thoughtfully. When am I to be initiated into the rest? Or shouldn't I ask? Her other reaches up, takes a fruit from the same tree. The second mystery is greater than the first, she says. She eats the fruit slowly, regarding Sriyanie. Like a mother, then, like a priest, she lays her hands upon the girl's shoulders. The world fades back into forms without content, into lines and points of vivid hue. They are suspended in the void once more. Beth's gaze is warm and bright, tranquil. The bond between them streams with light. Beth's soul opens. Her childhood, her growing up in the embrace of her own friend, her abundant adulthood, her being. Trembling, the child enters the door. Sriyanie is Beth, is Beth, is Beth. Inevitably, and thus the Lord's being as they are, in its specifics diabolically adventitious, the summons comes for Sriyanie when she is most vulnerable, disarmed by a yielding passion. Drowsing, she's boneless and spent in the tangled tumble of her 5. Yuri turns slightly, nuzzles into the crook of Colpius's heavy arm. His shin presses Sriyanie's gratingly, breaking her imagined reverie, and she too shifts a little, bringing her face around into the hairy curve of Guillaume's belly. The greater curve of the blue torus blurs in counterpoint. Guillaume's shrunken penis lolls in sticky fur. Sriyanie takes it in her hand and lifts her voice in a teasing, sweet soprano, "Ah, sweet mystery of life," and holds the note until her voice shivers in tremolo. Brolga prizes herself up from the knot, frowns, returns to meditation. Colpius guffaws, his brutal chest shaking, and Yuri starts from sleep, snorts, sniggers as the note dies, grabs at Sriyanie's nose to blat the rest. Guillaume gazes slyly down at them, retrieves his prick from Sriyanie's clasp and cups it piously, completes the line in creditable falsetto. "At last I've found thee!" They all break up, even Brolga, and fall with one accord on Guillaume, pummeling his naked flesh, grasping in threat and mock lust at the eponymous mystery. He wriggles free, springs to his feet, scampers with much display of terror to the sonic zone of the torus, and repels their attack with a lurid, deafening arpeggio. But Colpius has him by the ankles and pulls him down. Sriyanie has found a kilo of fat, crinkled peanuts, and rains them on his hapless head. Brolga interposes herself in his defense, kneels, takes the mystery between her lips, reverently, and the mood is altered in a trice. Sriyanie is elevated in a daze of helpless love for these 4. They cease their capers. Gently they caress one another's flesh. The torus is alert. Its blue light softens, and the tug of gravity fades. They float, enraptured and in love, and the cyborg dark star enters their joy without warning, terrible and ineluctable, to bear Sriyanie away. Here is the event's most dreadful aspect. She has known it will come, has expected it daily and hourly, and has denied it. Even in this moment of its actuality, she backs off, trembling, bringing up her palms. Some weak link of her will traduces her, saps courage from her perception of what is. The cyborg lord comes to her from the torus transit locus, and she shrinks away. He pads forward proudly, imperious, claws glinting as they show and retract between white tufts of downy fur. He has the guise of a huge chinchilla cat, his eyes pale chrysoprase slit by vertical dark emptiness, stiff gray hair along the spine, tail thick and white, aloft, white as the dense, beautiful fur of his body. His voice wheezes and rasps, "Come, pretty one, come, child," and his tongue is rose-pink and minutely scaled. Sriyanie puts her hands by her sides and breathes. The 4 of her 5 are frozen in postures of hatred and resignation. She is the first of them to be called. Her waiting has not been extensive, after all, yet she cannot believe it is at an end. Beth has prepared her. She finds herself unready. Her new love denies it. Denies it. The cat lifts on its back legs half her height and lays its paws against her. She does not recoil. Sriyanie, Nidzanvi, you are called. Are you ready for your season in heaven? Colpius will hold back no longer. With an animal cry, he lunges at the biofacted cat. The Lord whirls, rakes his check. The man staggers and falls, tiny globes of blood leaping in 5 lines on his pale flesh. The Dark Star turns once more. Woman, you will come. Let us leave this place with dignity. She is not permitted to go to Colpius. He sprawls unconscious in blue light, blood standing purple on his cheek. She would kiss them all, would weep. It is not allowed. She has been expecting this moment ever since the anti-Agathics technicians released her from the extended latency plateau. She is an adult. It is not forever, after all. With their eyes, the others make her promises she knows they cannot keep. We shall wait for you. Our hearts shall remember and lay themselves open to your absence and yearn for your return. They believe what their eyes tell her, but she knows that it does not work that way. Her first love is lost, is stolen, is spoiled in an attrition not yet begun but inevitable. Her breast aches as she follows the cat to the locus. She chokes with grief. The shrilling of transit makes her anew in another place, and the 4 are gone. She is here and they are there, sobbing and raging, tending Colpius's perfunctory wound. Misery closes her throat and her vision. After a time, she says, "You are inhuman. You are inhuman." 4 nest adults stand at a respectful distance. In their faces is excitement and expectation. The cat lifts its great green-golden eyes to her and says, "We are transhuman, child. We are entelechies. Come now and greet your new companions. Your life has begun." Finally, to be blunt, we are straining empathy to the shearing point. Sriyanie's Dasein, her being in the world, is outrageous enough, but that of the Dark Star's retinue is grotesque, unconscionable, even by her distended standards. Let's leave it at this. I'm staring through a tiny crack in the wall, and you're straining to get some sense out of my muttered reports. We make use of what we can get, which is better than nothing. So consider Sriyanie in the Dark Star's den, attended by the blithe sprites of the Lord's retinue, or 6 handsful of them at a time in rotation. She's sullen and moody for a period, disdainful, uncooperative, and who can blame her? But again, we're in trouble. Neither Sriyanie nor the Hivers count time as we do. We lack even a meaningful common chronology. On the outside, under the filtration fields, the free people keep at least the rudiments of solar, lunar, sidereal cycles. But the world is long since razed to a monocrop of weeds amid filth, choked by millennia of high-energy waste, a catastrophic ecology of entropy. If their bodies still tick to the fluctuations and triggering jabs of that off-center precession, sun and closest planets, an astrology long since assimilated in their biophysics, it is held of less account than the more intimate seasons of individual attainment. Those quantal leaps of concept rehearsed by initiates in the fecund void of time-stop. Their yardstick is the levels, a calendar relativistic as any starship's clock. In a sense, they have returned to sacred, as distinct from profane, time. More accurately, it is human rather than industrial. Bizarre? Unwieldy? Not by comparison, for the cyborg's little doves and hinds time zings like an elastic band. Hook your head into Terrato technology, and the data bits fly with winged feet. Galaxies zoom in your skull like randy bugs, or if you prefer, primary partons grind to a halt, fuzzy in a dew of probability amplitudes, so that you may scale their crags and bounce in their pools. Time is, to all intents and purposes, obliterated. History is generating inside those awesome CPUs so many Google times faster than fleshly cells can conceive that its human specification is without meaning. Sriyanie's term as hostage/tourist/pupil in the cyborg domain comes, as for all frees, borrowed briefly and replaced, at a critical period. On a rising curve into maturity, her trajectory has been interrupted. Everything shrieks at this violence, yet there is nothing palpable to repudiate. Anger fades. Finally, she's prepared to debate, at least with her cloyingly sweet sentries. "Your lives are a travesty," she tells Levani dully. He props his stained-glass chin on his knuckles and considers her tolerantly. "You are an abrogation of everything decent in myth and history." "All life is a mockery," he says. Like her, he speaks Chomsky. The internal dissonance of his statement squeals like a rusty nail. There are two opposed ways of reading this onomatopoeia. Mind is the progressive escape from its substrate's deformations. Our logic nets are an attempt on the attainment of unshackled mind. The cyborg condition stands at the beginning of the route to freedom. Why do you let the laggard imperatives of your flesh blind you to reality? "But look at you," she says crossly. "Intaglios on your flesh like some goddamn ancient Maori, and you don't know what sensuousness means. You're riddled with contradictions, and you talk about logic. You've sold your Tao for a mess of frozen sophistries. I hate you. You are all disgusting." Their teeth are white and perfect in the domain, but they do not eat. Her status being what it is, she is not permitted access to transit, so cannot find escape even to the self-made menus of Time Stop. What's more, it comes to her with horror that she sees no difference, in essence, between the consensus ontology of Time Stop and the online fantasies of The Nest. If the cyborgs can fulfill your every need with pulsing fields juggling the fibers of your brain, a world of illusion tailored to your heart's desire, in what specific is this inferior to the synchronistic landscapes beyond the discontinuity door? Beneath her feet, in sturdy metal tanks, the bulk of humanity dreams. Can her philosophy offer them more? She approaches a crisis of faith. She seeks out Levani, homesick for her four, and puts her arms about him. "Make love to me." Near the first peak of her pleasure, he enters her with wondrous skill, and they move in a delirium. When they lie exhausted, she tracing the tangled, glowing fingers of his pale skin, he smiling gently at her astonishment, she says, "I don't understand. You're life-haters. I don't understand." "In communion, orgasm is endless," he says. Tranquility is shattered. She pulls away from him and feels a numbness spread in her body. "You must stop running," he says in her ear without touching her. She refuses to look at him. "Very well," he tells her. "I shall try to explain, but this language is not well suited to it. The only way to know is to place yourself in full trust online to the logics." She wants to leave, but some terminal fatigue of the spirit drains her will. Eyes closed, unmoving, she waits passively. It is impossible to argue against the cyborg Weltanschauung, because to do so would be absurd. The patterns they can manipulate so far surpass those we can command that we must take what they tell us on faith. And what they reveal is that life is a temporary, necessary aberration in the unfolding of a deterministic cosmos. Gygo, she says wearily, the hoariest fallacy known to science. Garbage in, garbage out. For a moment, the beautiful, ageless man shows anger. Sriyanie has ventured close to blasphemy. He goes on after a pause. I've experienced its truth, Sriyanie. At the universal dawn, in the great white hole, the metrodynamic was clear and linear and untarnished by uncertainty. The cosmos told its time like a perfect clockwork, a sublime Newtonian machine. Cause and effect were simple and total. The intrusive blight of quantum probabilities had not yet arisen. Dumbly, she shakes her head. His words are so close to the truth, as all effective deceit must be, but he has everything turned about. Inevitably, the planets coalesced about their suns, organic acids came together at their ice caps, amino acids formed as the enriched ice thawed, peptides, proteins, nucleotides, life, and the first disharmony intruded. Life multiplied, complexified, transformed the worlds where it was born, and introduced everywhere the randomizing horrors of its own holistic laws. No, Sriyanie says, aghast. You're wrong. But mind came from life, Levani insists more loudly. The underlying order of the metric frame was discovered anew, and the possibility revived that it might regain its Laplacian grandeur. The cyborgs are that hope embodied, mind free of the organic pestilence which structured all five-space, non-null entropy systems into hideous irrationality. Her lethargy vanished. Deep within her, some buried archetype lends her its comfort. Beth and her predecessors confronting this same vile caricature of truth. "It's insane!" she cries. How might she dispute with this emissary of omnipotent intelligence? The apodictic reality of time, of time stop, is her bulwark. She knows, beyond authoritative denial or confusion, how the universe is hinged. Of course life structures the metric frame, she says. Of course it imposes constraints on the primordial condition. But that Ur-state is synchronistic. From the white hole until the protozoa, the cosmic parameters interacted only by affinity. How else do you suppose that life arose? There simply wasn't time for the process to occur in your Laplacian fantasy. Child, Levani says softly, do you dare to argue empirically with such mentalities? They transcend our boundaries so entirely that we cannot even keep abreast of the broadest generalizations from their real-time research. Endless elaboration of spurious, self-serving premises, Sriyanie jibes. The constraints which pure thought impresses are syllogistic, exactly the paradigm your God machines function by. How can they escape the trap they've made for themselves? Look, Levani, the Freeze mysteries are radically empirical, yet there's no merest niche in the Lord's mad worldview for the basic data of those human experiences. You've been gold, Levani. They've turned you into an adjunct of their circuits, and you can't allow yourself to recognize the obvious. If the Newtonian laws have some general validity, it's precisely because intention and value-ridden perception have made them work. It's only by profound inner silence, a stilling of the beta activity in your head, a retreat from will to wish, that the primal reality can reassert itself. You, Eve, stuff yourselves to overflowing with a clamor of contingent facts and relinquish magic. But the goal of consciousness, Levani says stubbornly, is the hypostacy of reason. The goal of consciousness, Sriyanie retorts, is a harmonious equilibrium of confluence and cause. Your culture strives to enforce predictability, and you achieve nothing but a totalitarian extinction of all that's beautiful and loving in the universe. It is the cyborgs who are deforming reality, Levani. They have lust and no love. What do you know of beauty? The man asks without sardonicism, radiant as a sun deity. You play at patterns while we soar on the Lord's wings into the cool tectonics of the all. I cannot tell you, little one. It is something you shall have to experience for yourself when the Lord offers it. She is sick at heart, corroded by his conviction. What is the foundation of her faith? A conventional wisdom obtained from eccentric Puritans, an ineffable mystery indistinguishable, if one is to be sufficiently ruthless, from the illusions she rails against. Sriyanie walks away from the Iver and crouches in her black place, desperate for Brolga's calmness and Colpius's strength, hopelessly miserable without her other and her four. She shall be returned to them, eventually. She clings to this. The cyborgs are not coercive, but there is an agenda, a curriculum of sorts. When she is not under her privacy field, deep in the meditation practices of fourth level, Sriyanie adopts some approximation of the nest's observances. Alien as they are, the Iver pursue their own perverse version of progress through the saccadic levels, but they have for other only the cyborg peripherals. So she meets no youths. All the members of her adoptive nest are ageless adults. Among their delegated duties is custody of the region's dream tank humans. Nauseated, she attends their monitoring sessions. Another stint relates obscurely to the nurturing of those babies and children selected by the Dark Star for full conscious existence. The Iver, of course, are functionally sterile. These infants begin their education in the womb of their dreaming mother's tanks. Shielded on an observation platform above the nursery, Sriyanie stares in revulsion at a dozen neonates playing vivid say and fetch games with their simulation system. Almost immobile, their bald heads a third the length of their tiny bodies, they lie with one leg tucked up and the opposite arm thrown out, their field of optical vision constricted by the tonic neck reflex. Illumination in the nursery is dim, as it has been since their birth. Holographic helices coil and drift in the air. A robust, rollicking music fills the room, and voices speak to the babies in warm, uncomplicated Chomsky. The pink creatures gurgle and cluck, their responses instantly shaped by the auditory feedbacks. But Sriyanie knows this is not the language they use to talk to one another. Machines of terrible subtlety are resonating to the patterns in their brains, mediating their dialogue, teasing and provoking and soothing them, a parallel system of limb and eye and larynx, conveying the building blocks of shape and texture and taste their own extremities are too feeble to obtain. The neonates are singing rhymes she cannot hear with their electronic extensions. They are counting, adding, and subtracting as in the womb they once manipulated phantom rods and cubes and spheres, drawn from their innate intuition codes by the probes of the machines. They will be weaned from this mediation in time, as free babies are weaned from milk for Iver. Sriyanie reflects that comparison is risible. Their nourishment, with the exception of social potables, is rendered to them by means far more efficient than ingestion. The case is similar, she realizes with distress, for all the other fathomless instinctual processes which link humanity to the beasts. For the beings of the nest, it's true, breath and exhalation are governed by the ancient autonomic authority of the body. They enjoy the rictus of orgasm, its awful preliminaries and denouement. They are curious, creative, playful, but their instincts are given over to an egoic calculation so alienated from their juices that it is entirely reified in the vast coded energies of their cyborg masters. Eating and drinking, gone, save as a ritual vestige. Maintenance of body temperature and the comfort of the sensuous skin, abolished, shucked off to the care of a total environment. Rest, sleep, dream, transcended in the dazzle of endless day, all pity and terror purged at second hand by potent circuits. Fear and aggression, forgotten in this garden of conciliation and unremitting generosity. Excretion, unnecessary. She makes these lists and annotations constantly, holding herself to a stark detachment, itemizing clinically the lost dimensions of humanity. The nest is patient with her, for their frustrations are obliterated in instant gratification. If they rebuke her in their inveterate pride, there is no hidden sting, no angry barb lurking to shred an opponent. Sandstrom challenges her one day with a serenity which denies any trace of belligerence. "Sri, you can't claim you haven't learned a great deal while you have been with us." He speaks perfect late English, and his accent makes her smile. She's been absorbing mid-English from the teaching resonance. "No," she agrees. "The pedagogy of the nest is superlative. It is also addictive. I do not wish to be a programmed slave." "You are inconsistent," he says. "Beneath your filtration fields outside, do you hunt wild beasts with charred sticks and eat their flesh raw? Do you kill one another for a scrap of metal? Do you huddle in neurotic double binds of family and hierarchy?" "That analogy's foolish," Sriyanie says. "One may learn and change. We have not abdicated from humanity." "Are you sure? You are fourth level, Sriyanie. By the standards of those myths you love so dearly, you're a middle-aged woman, even an old one. Yet you are barely past puberty. Isn't this unnatural?" "Even the Australopithecines had a sexual latency in the growth curve between the 5th and 9th years. How else could the learning brain retain its plasticity long enough?" "Exactly. But your enzymologists, as the least of their intrusions, have retarded that primitive latency plateau by 20 years. Neither of us is truly human, child, if you insist on your mythic definitions." "We have expanded our humanity, Sandstrom," she says heatedly. "You have discarded yours for a compulsive, voracious noetics." The dispute is trapped in its conflicting categories. Sandstrom leaves her at last, and she cleaves to her certitudes. By now, no doubt, the 4 of her 5 are dispersed across the world, separated, lonely, adrift in the appalling seductions of various nests. Worse still, the thought pierces her, perhaps they remain together, living and growing despite the suspended threat of severance. She is hardly ever in their thoughts. She is abandoned. She will not seek out communion with the Dark Star. She will not. She yearns for sleep, but it has been taken from her. You've been listening to pre-1990s speculative fiction readings with a highlight on science fiction by Darrell T. Smith II. Please consider clicking the donation link in the description box. Thank you so much for your time and your imagination.